Welcome back everyone. Today, we're continuing with the next part of this series, called What If Goku Remembered the Saiyans? My name is Ash. Please, for me, drop a like and subscribe to the page. Also leave your comments down below. With that, let's begin. Bardock darted towards Berter at top speed, his fist aimed straight at the towering blue warrior's face. Berter, with lightning-fast reflexes, raised his arm and intercepted the blow just before it could land. Their muscles tensed as they locked in that moment, the air around them crackling with energy. Berter quickly followed up by thrusting his knee towards Bardock's midsection, hoping to land a devastating strike. But Bardock was faster than Berter anticipated. He swiftly brought his hands down, blocking the knee just in time. His arms trembled as he struggled to hold back Berter's force, a groan escaping his lips. It was clear that the blue alien was stronger than he appeared. Seeing an opening while Bardock's arms were occupied, Berter swung his other fist in a wide arc, aiming for Bardock's head, a blow that could knock him out cold. But Bardock was always one step ahead. Sensing the danger, he flipped backward, narrowly escaping what would have been a bone-shattering punch. He landed a few feet away, his body tensing, as he quickly powered up to put some distance between them. "You're fast, but not fast enough," Berter taunted, a confident grin spreading across his face as he rushed forward again, not giving Bardock any room to rest. He unleashed a relentless barrage of punches and kicks, each one blurring through the air as he pressed Bardock, trying to break through his defenses. Bardock dodged and blocked as best he could, but Berter's attacks were coming in too fast. "I need to find an opening," Bardock thought, his eyes darting for any weakness in Berter's approach, but so far, the blue giant wasn't giving him much to work with. Debzi. Meanwhile, Tien touched down just outside Guru's house, the heavy weight of the Dragon Ball in his hand. He stepped inside, the atmosphere immediately calming him, despite the urgency of the situation. "Bulma," he said, spotting her among the Namekians inside the peaceful home. Bulma turned around, a smile of relief crossing her face. "Tien, glad to see you made it. I see you've brought the Dragon Ball." "Yeah," Tien replied, a small nod following. "Bardock thought it'd be best to bring it here to you." Bulma's expression grew serious. "Good call. We've got the other one right here." She pointed to the glowing sphere on the table next to her. Tien wasn't in the mood for small talk, not with the stakes as high as they were. He quickly got to the point. "How did Bardock get so powerful all of a sudden?" he asked, genuinely curious. The Bardock he remembered wasn't this strong. "It was Guru," a voice answered from the other side of the room. Tien turned to see Nail, the stoic Namekian warrior, standing with his arms crossed. He unlocked some of Bardock's hidden potential. Unlocked? Tien raised an eyebrow, not entirely sure what Nail meant. "What does that even mean?" "You'll understand soon," a deep voice rumbled. It was Guru, the elder of the Namekians, his enormous form resting in the center of the room. His wise eyes locked onto Tien. "Come forward," he said, motioning with a slow hand. Without hesitation, Tien stepped closer to the elder, curiosity burning inside him. Guru placed his massive hand on Tien's head, his eyes narrowing in concentration. After a few moments of silence, Guru spoke again, his voice calm yet firm. "You do not possess the same raw power that your Saiyan friend holds," he said bluntly, "but there is hidden strength within you, and I will help you access it." As Guru focused, a white glow began to swirl around Tien, growing brighter with each passing second. Tien could feel the power surging within him, rushing through his body like a raging river. It was overwhelming. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the glow faded. Stepping back, Tien took a deep breath, his eyes wide in amazement. This is incredible," he said, flexing his hands as he felt the new power coursing through his veins. He looked over to Bulma, his expression determined. "I'm going to help Bardock. I can't let him fight alone. Dibsy." At the same time, Vegeta stood frozen in place, staring in pure horror at the one being he feared above all others, Lord Frieza. Even after unlocking new levels of power within himself, he knew he still wasn't anywhere near strong enough to face the tyrant. The sight of Frieza standing there, calm yet radiating an aura of menace, sent a chill down Vegeta's spine. Frieza's voice broke through the tension, his tone dripping with mockery. "Ah, Vegeta," he purred, his lips curling into a sinister smile. "You look shocked. Did you honestly think you could steal my Dragon Balls without me noticing? How disappointing." Before Vegeta could muster a response, Frieza's fist shot out, faster than Vegeta could react. The blow landed square in his stomach with a sickening thud, driving the air from Vegeta's lungs and sending blood spraying from his mouth. Vegeta doubled over in pain, clutching his stomach as the shock of the hit washed over him. But Frieza wasn't done. With a savage grin, he brought his elbow down hard on Vegeta's face, shattering the prince's nose in an instant. The sane prince reeled from the impact, his vision blurring from the pain. "Now," Frieza said, his voice calm as ever, "I believe you have some information I want. Where are your little friends hiding?" Vegeta gritted his teeth, trying to steady his breathing. "I work alone," he spat, refusing to show weakness, even as blood dripped from his broken nose. Frieza chuckled darkly. "Oh, come now, Vegeta. You and I both know that you didn't take out all of my men by yourself. You've had help." His tail lashed out, slamming into Vegeta's face with brutal force, sending him crashing to the ground. Vegeta's ribs cracked under the pressure of Frieza's next punch, the sharp pain shooting through his body as he gasped for air. How can he still be this strong? Bardock barely managed to block as Burter's powerful leg shot towards his head, the force behind the kick making his arms tremble. He had been fighting the Blue Giant for what felt like hours, but despite his best efforts, he hadn't landed any serious blows. Each attack he threw either missed or was effortlessly blocked by Burter. "I need to do something or I'll be finished soon," he thought to himself, breathing heavily as the relentless assault continued. His body still ached from the last time he used the Kaioken to take down G's. The strain had left him feeling numb, but Bardock knew if he wanted any chance of survival, he'd have to risk using it again. "Kaioken, ×2!" Bardock roared, his voice echoing across the Namekian plains. Instantly, his body exploded with a fiery red aura, the energy swirling around him as his power doubled. With his newfound strength, Bardock shot forward, his fist connecting squarely with Burter's chin. The impact was crushing, and the Ginyu warrior was sent hurtling into the sky, spinning out of control from the sheer force of the punch. Bardock didn't waste a second. Channeling his energy, he shot after Burter, appearing in the air above him with blinding speed. "This ends now," Bardock shouted, bringing both his fists down in a hammer-like motion on the blue warrior's head. Burter plummeted toward the ground like a meteor, slamming into the Namekian soil with enough force to create a massive crater. For a moment, the battlefield was silent, dust and debris floating in the air. Bardock hovered above, breathing heavily, hoping that he had finally done enough to put Burter down. But as the dust began to clear, his eyes widened in disbelief. Burter stood up, battered but still standing strong in the center of the crater. His armor was cracked, bruises lined his muscular blue frame, and a small trickle of blood ran from his mouth, but he was otherwise unharmed. "Not bad, kid," Burter said, wiping the blood away with the back of his hand. "But it'll take more than that to finish me." Before Bardock could react, Burter shot back up at him, moving faster than before. A flurry of punches and kicks rained down on the young Saiyajin, each strike faster and more brutal than the last. Bardock, still trying to conserve energy, had dropped the Kaioken, and now he was barely managing to block Burter's onslaught. With each blow, his defense grew weaker, and Burter's attacks only seemed to grow stronger. Finally, Burter broke through Bardock's guard. A vicious punch crashed into Bardock's diaphragm, knocking the wind out of him. Bardock gasped, his body doubling over from the force of the blow, blood spurting from his mouth. But Burter wasn't done. While Bardock was still struggling to catch his breath, Burter's knee came up in a brutal arc, smashing into Bardock's face with sickening force. Bardock's vision blurred as pain exploded in his skull. Unable to maintain his focus, he fell from the sky, crashing into the ground with a thud. Dazed, he barely had time to recover before Burter followed up, diving down at full speed. The Blue Giant's fist connected with Bardock's temple, sending him skidding across the dirt, his body tumbling like a rag doll. "Crusher Cannon!" Burter shouted, his voice filled with fury. A massive ball of blue energy formed in his hand, crackling with deadly power. Without hesitation, Burter hurled the energy blast directly at Bardock, aiming to finish him off once and for all. Bardock looked up through blurry eyes, his head spinning. "I have to move." The energy blast was coming straight for him, and he had no time to dodge. With no other options, Bardock forced himself to stand. "Kaioken, ×2!" he screamed, his body once again erupting in that familiar red aura. The power surge doubled his strength, but it came at a cost. His muscles screamed in agony, and his vision wavered from the strain. Still disoriented, Bardock couldn't hold the Kaioken for more than a few seconds. His knees buckled, and the aura flickered out. The power vanished as quickly as it came, leaving him vulnerable. Bardock's heart pounded in his chest as Birder's Crusher Cannon closed in. "There's no way I can dodge this," he thought, bracing himself for the impact. With no other choice, Bardock crossed his arms over his chest and dug his feet into the ground, preparing to take the blast head on. The Crusher Cannon hit with a thunderous explosion, pushing Bardock back as his arms trembled under the force. The blast engulfed him, the shockwave tearing through the battlefield and kicking up a cloud of dust. For a long moment, the area was silent, the smoke from the explosion hanging in the air. When it finally began to clear, Bardock was still standing, but barely. His body was covered in burns, his clothes torn to shreds, and his arms and legs were littered with bruises. Blood dripped from his face, and every inch of him ached. But somehow, he was still alive. Birder's eyes narrowed. "You're tougher than you look, kid," he sneered, already preparing another attack. His hand glowed as he charged up another Crusher Cannon, the energy swirling violently in his palm. "But it's over now. Time to die." Crusher Cannon! Birder roared, sending the deadly blue energy blast flying toward Bardock once again. Bardock's body tensed, bracing for the crushing impact of Birder's energy blast. He crossed his arms tightly over his chest, expecting the searing pain any second. But it never came. Confused, he looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. The Crusher Cannon had exploded far off in the distance, leaving only a faint trail of smoke in its wake. Standing between Bardock and Birder was Tien, his fierce three-eyed gaze locked on to the towering blue alien. "I'll handle this one," Tien said calmly, glancing back at Bardock with a reassuring nod. "You look like you could use a break." Bardock, breathing heavily and still reeling from his earlier battle, was too exhausted to argue. "Yeah, I won't stop you." Turning back to Birder, Tien's expression hardened. The air around him crackled with energy as he called out, "Kaioken ×2!" Instantly, a bright red aura engulfed him, surging outward with incredible force. But Tien barely flinched under the power's strain. Before Birder could react, Tien shot forward like a blur, his fist slamming into Birder's gut with such force that the blue giant's eyes bulged, his mouth opening in shock. The blow bent Birder in half, driving the wind from his lungs with a pained grunt. Tien didn't let up. He spun, his foot snapping up and connecting with Birder's chin in a powerful kick, sending the Ginyu force member flying into the sky. His body soared upward, barely visible against the clouds. Tien's gaze followed him, his face stern, as he raised his hands in front of him, shaping them into a triangular pattern. "Dry beam! Ha!" Tien shouted, his voice echoing across the battlefield. A brilliant golden wave of energy exploded from his hands, cutting through the sky and slamming into Birder. The blue warrior didn't even have time to scream before the attack disintegrated him completely, leaving nothing but dust and fading energy in the air. Bardock, still catching his breath, slowly stood up, his legs shaky from the beating he had taken earlier. "Thanks," he said, walking up to Tien. He wiped some blood from his lip, his body still aching from the battle. "No problem," Tien replied with a small smile, his aura fading as he powered down from the Kaioken. "Looked like you needed a hand." Bardock nodded. "I thought I could handle the Kaioken, but it's more draining than I thought. I've never felt exhaustion like this before." "I get it," Tien said, stretching his arms. "The Kaioken isn't easy to maintain. It takes a toll on your body if you're not careful." He turned his head, his expression suddenly serious as he sensed something in the distance. A massive energy source was heading their way, fast. "Can you still fight?" Tien asked, his eyes narrowing. Bardock clenched his fists, feeling the soreness in his muscles. "I'll be fine," he said, determination hardening his voice. There was no way he was sitting out the next battle, no matter how banged up he was. DBZiz! Vegeta's body hit the ground hard, skidding across the rocky surface as another of Frieza's brutal punches sent him flying. His body was battered, his armor cracked, and blood dripped from his lip. Every inch of him was covered in cuts and bruises. The pain was overwhelming, but even more than the physical agony, Vegeta felt a crushing weight of despair settle over him. He hits too hard, Vegeta thought bitterly, wiping the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. Even with all my new strength, it's still not enough. I'm still no match for him. Frieza floated above him, looking down with a mixture of amusement and cruelty. His tail flicked lazily behind him, a mocking grin on his face. "Is that all, Vegeta?" Frieza taunted, his voice dripping with condescension. "I expected more from the Prince of Saiyans." Vegeta's breath came in ragged gasps, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he was going to die here, no matter how much power he had gained. It wasn't enough to defeat the monster standing before him. "I should have known. There's no beating him." Frieza hovered lower, reaching out and grabbing Vegeta by the throat, lifting him effortlessly into the air. The Saiyan Prince struggled weakly, his vision swimming. Frieza's grip tightened, and Vegeta gasped for breath, the pressure on his windpipe unbearable. "Now," Frieza said with a menacing calm, his eyes narrowing, "I'll ask you one more time. Who killed Zarbon?" Vegeta hesitated, pain shooting through his body as Frieza's grip tightened further. "There's no point in lying," he realized grimly. "He'll kill me either way." "Kakarot," Vegeta rasped, his voice strained as he gasped for air. Frieza's eyes gleamed with a strange curiosity. "Another sign," he said, more to himself than to Vegeta. He cocked his head, his tail swishing slowly behind him. "Why didn't I hear about this one sooner?" Vegeta coughed, trying to force words through his battered lungs. He was sent away as a child to wipe out a planet, right before you destroyed our people." Frieza's smile widened. "Oh, so you do know about that," he mused, his tone almost playful. "I suppose that explains why you've been acting so rebellious lately. I was wondering what had gotten into you, Vegeta." Vegeta's eyes widened slightly. "You're not denying it?" he asked, barely able to believe what he was hearing. Frieza wasn't even trying to hide his crimes anymore. "Why would I?" Frieza laughed, the sound cold and heartless. "It's not like you'll be around long enough to tell anyone. Now will you?" DB's Captain Ginyu landed softly on the battlefield, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust as he surveyed the area. The craters from the earlier fight dotted the ground, evidence of the fierce battles that had taken place. There was no sign of his team anywhere. Only Tien and Bardock stood before him. "So," Ginyu said slowly, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Tien, "you're the one who killed my men." Tien didn't flinch. His posture was calm, but his gaze was firm. "That's right," he said simply, bending the truth just a little. Letting Ginyu think he had taken out all of the Ginyu force alone might throw the captain off his game, maybe make him nervous. If Ginyu focused all his attention on him, Bardock might be able to find an opening. Ginyu's eyes flickered with something dangerous, but he didn't look surprised. Instead, he smiled darkly. "Well, I'll give you one chance," he said, his voice low and smooth. "Join me. Work under Lord Frieza and fight at my side. Together, we'll be unstoppable." Tien didn't hesitate, his answer firm and resolute. "Never." He glanced briefly at Bardock, then back at Ginyu. "We'll never work for Frieza." "Well then," Captain Ginyu sneered, his purple-skinned face twisted in a menacing grin, "I guess I'll have to kill you both." Without another word, Ginyu shot forward with alarming speed, his fist flying straight at Tien's face. The Triclops barely had a moment to react. "Kaioken, ×2!" Tien shouted, his body erupting with a fiery red aura as his power doubled. Despite the boost, Ginyu was still too fast. The purple warrior's fist crashed into Tien's cheek, sending him flying backward with devastating force, the ground shaking as Tien's body skidded across the dirt. Ginyu didn't waste a second. He launched himself at Tien again, throwing a barrage of kicks and punches as they both soared through the air. Tien moved his arms quickly, blocking as many of the hits as he could. But Ginyu's attacks were coming too fast, too relentless. For every punch Tien deflected, another two landed, each blow feeling like a sledgehammer slamming into him. From the ground, Bardock watched in horror as Tien was being overwhelmed by the fierce onslaught. He clenched his fists tightly, frustration boiling inside him. "I can't just stand here and do nothing," he thought, his muscles tensing. His body still ached from the battle with Burter, but he'd had a few precious moments to recover. He could fight again. "Kaioken, ×2!" Bardock roared, his own red aura flaring up as he powered up, feeling the familiar rush of energy surge through him. Without hesitation, he shot toward Captain Ginyu, fists and feet flying at the back of the purple warrior's head. Sensing the attack, Ginyu spun around just in time, narrowly dodging Bardock's punch. "You're quick," Ginyu said with a smirk, his eyes gleaming with excitement. but not quick enough. He prepared to retaliate, but the momentary distraction had given Tien an opening. The Triclops quickly launched an attack of his own, throwing a powerful kick toward Ginyu's side. Ginyu managed to block the kick with his knee, but before he could counterattack, Bardock was on him again. Together, Tien and Bardock began attacking from both sides, forcing Ginyu on the defensive. The captain of the Ginyu force deflected and dodged as best he could, but the two warriors were relentless, their combined assault keeping him on his toes. Meanwhile, far from the battlefield, a sleek spaceship touched down on the surface of Namek. The hatch hissed open, and two figures stepped out, Kakarot and Raditz, the Saiyan brothers. Kakarot stretched his arms, yawning as he took in the sight of the alien planet. "So this is Namek," he said, looking around at the green landscape. The sky was a strange shade of turquoise, and the air felt heavy with the presence of power levels scattered across the planet. "Not much to look at," Raditz grumbled, crossing his arms as he scanned the horizon. "Too much green. I think I prefer your planet, Kakarot." Kakarot chuckled. "Yeah, I guess Earth's a bit easier on the eyes," but his face quickly grew serious. "Hold on, I can sense two battles happening right now." He furrowed his brow, focusing on the power levels. "One of them, there's a huge power to the east, and it's pounding on a smaller one. That must be Frieza." Raditz's expression darkened, "And it feels like the smaller one is Vegeta." Kakarot nodded grimly, but then his head snapped north. "There's another fight happening too. I can sense Tien and Bardock, but there's someone else with them, another strong power." "Are you sure?" Raditz asked, his eyebrows raising. "That can't be your son, right? Those power levels feel way too high for a kid." "It's him," Kakarot insisted. "I don't know how he got so strong, but it's Bardock. I can feel it." Raditz's eyes flicked toward the north, considering. "All right, I'll go help them out. You deal with Frieza and Vegeta." Kakarot glanced at his brother, his voice filled with determination. "Make sure no harm comes to my son, Raditz." Raditz smirked. "He seems to be doing all right for now. And after all that training you put me through with that 100 times gravity nonsense, I'll make sure that clown they're fighting, probably Captain Ginyu, won't be much of a challenge." Kakarot grinned, his confidence returning. "Good, let's finish this." Diesel. Back at the battlefield, Tien flew backward, his body reeling as Captain Ginyu's fist connected with his chin. He grunted in pain, his red Kaioken aura flickering as he struggled to stay in the fight. Ginyu's strength was overwhelming, but Tien refused to give in. As Tien staggered back, Ginyu turned his attention to Bardock, who was already launching another attack. The purple warrior ducked under Bardock's punch with ease, then countered with a brutal fist to the young Saiyan's stomach. The force of the punch knocked the wind out of Bardock, and the red aura around him flickered before fading entirely. Blood flew from Bardock's mouth as he doubled over, gasping for breath. Ginyu didn't hesitate. He raised both fists high and brought them down hard on Bardock's back, sending the boy crashing into the ground below, creating a crater on impact. Bardock lay at the bottom of the crater, groaning in pain, his body barely able to move. He tried to push himself up, but his arms shook from exhaustion. Ginyu hovered above, looking down at him with a smug grin. "Looks like you're done, kid," he taunted. But before he could descend and finish Bardock off, Tien was back in the fight, his red aura flaring as he charged at Ginyu with renewed determination. "Don't you ever quit?" Ginyu growled, annoyed at the persistent Triclops. He raised his arm to block Tien's attack, his sharp eyes locking onto his new opponent. "I'll admit, you've got spirit, but it's useless against me.